And we welcome you inside our SNY studios. Special coverage here as the Mets are getting set to introduce Justin Verlander out at Citi Field, the newest Mets starting pitcher, right atop that rotation alongside Max Scherzer. Gary Apple inside our studios alongside our SNY MLB insider. It's Andy Martino. Jerry Blevins, our colleague, going to join us in just a little bit. But Andy, let's start with Verlander and this day, the magnitude of this day, how we got here. You broke this story that Verlander was coming to the New York Mets. How did we get here? You
know, that week, Gary, that the Mets were negotiating with Jacob deGrom, they were also talking to Justin Verlander. And Verlander wasn't really a plan B. He met personally with Steve Cohen during this process. The two of them hit it off. Verlander and the Mets organization really spoke the same language, very new school, very analytics-driven, and it was a connection on a personal level that really actually fit better than deGrom. So it was a dilemma for the Mets. It was like, well, deGrom's our guy, but Verlander really feels right. Plus, Verlander was commanding a shorter-term deal, which the Mets like, so that felt right. But they still had to pursue deGrom. When deGrom signed with the Texas Rangers that Friday night, it was full steam ahead for Justin Verlander. The following day, Saturday, Verlander himself did a lot of homework on the Mets organization, more Zooms with people and calls with people through the organization. They had the parameters of a deal worked out Sunday, and then that Monday, that first Monday we were at the winter meetings, they got that done. Verlander was never plan B for deGrom. He was like, plan A in a perfect world, and then deGrom made his decision, made it easier on the Mets.
So on that Monday morning, there was a lot of discussion that Verlander could potentially go to the LA Dodgers. Did that ever come close to happening?
Nobody was going to beat Steve Cohen on this one.
Okay. As
we've seen with Max Scherzer a year ago, as we've seen when he wanted to extend Lindor, that wasn't competing with another team, but still, when he sets his sights on something that he wants to do, we know that money's not going to be an object, but there's a salesmanship aspect with Cohen, too, where he just decides he doesn't want to be denied. He came in with this reputation in the art world. When he wanted a Picasso or a Giacometti, he was going to get it. He got himself. And that's the vibe I was getting with Verlander. So, no, Verlander would have had to so strongly prefer the Dodgers to the Mets. And even still, I think Cohen might have been able to persuade him. So, no, this felt like a Mets thing from the moment that deGrom signed elsewhere.
So with this signing, Verlander coming to the Mets, he's reunited with his former Tigers teammate, Max Scherzer. Yep. So they sit atop the rotation. They're not kids, right? One's 38, going to be 39. The other's 39, going to be 40. Is there any worry about age and how that might impact the upcoming season?
I think in fairness, there has to be. It's a similar equation to last year when we saw deGrom and Scherzer at the top of the rotation, and frankly, the two of them neither of them was able to contribute a full season. Scherzer was on the field more than deGrom, so this is the risk that a team runs when they go with age at the top of a rotation. But it's what the Mets have to do, Gary, because they don't have that Major League ready pitching in the pipeline, right, and they have the resources of their owner who can sort of wallpaper over those organizational deficiencies as they work those out for the next few years by paying veterans handsomely and having them at the top of the rotation. It's risky injury-wise, but building an expensive veteran team is the only thing the Mets can do to have a championship-caliber club.
All right, so Justin Verlander about to be introduced out at Citi Field. We take you there right now.
We'd like to welcome all of the audiences watching on the Mets social channels, SNY, and MLB Network. We're extremely honored to welcome Justin's agent, Mark, Mets General Manager Billy Epler, and of course Justin. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mets General Manager Billy Epler.
Well, good morning. Seems like we're doing this a little regular, so but good to see everybody here again. Thanks for coming. Today's another exciting day for the Mets. We'd like to welcome Justin, his wife Kate, daughter Genevieve, Justin's agent Mark Pieper, to the Mets family. You know, Justin's a championship caliber pitcher, and I think it's pretty evident what our goals are here: win as many games as possible, get deep into October, play meaningful baseball, and be the last team standing. So Justin's resume, his accomplishments, they speak for themselves. But one thing that was interesting in this process was early in the conversations, we hadn't signed anybody. We were going through some negotiations, and ultimately we landed on Justin, and worked pretty quickly through that weekend to be able to get something done with Justin, and then early on Monday at the winter meetings. I don't think I let you leave the hotel room.
Right, exactly.
And we were able to get something done that morning. And the thing that's interesting is that Justin shares a vision that we have, and he took a leap of faith because, like I said, we hadn't signed anybody to that date. So we're really excited to have him here. Really excited to see him, at the front end of our rotation, and we know that. He's going to bring a tenacity, an intensity, a focus, and just help us kind of drive home that championship standard. So with that, Justin, welcome to the Mets family. Glad to have you. Kate, Genevieve, welcome.
And with that, we'll now have a jersey presentation.
Thank you.
Hope you're quick, bud.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Ethan, you want photo now? Or?
Yep. You guys, we'll pause for, while he gets situated, and we'll do the traditional photo.
Just won't bite them all.
Yeah, that's good.
Close to it.
Want us back behind or in front?
Right then.
Good, guys?
Very good.
Good. Good. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Well, Justin?
Yeah. Thank you, Billy. This offseason was interesting for me. It was my first time really going through like a very normal free agent process. And from the beginning, I think Steve and Billy reached out very early on and expressed their interest. And I had a lovely conversation with Steve in the first week or so of my free agency. And we really didn't talk much about baseball. It was just getting to know one another. And it gave me such a positive vibe for what his vision of this franchise is, and that he wants to make this franchise amazing. And, to follow that up, speaking with Billy and the rest of the staff, Buck, they all share that same vision and passion to do whatever's necessary to make this a championship caliber organization again. And really, that's what it came down to for me. Was wanting to be part of this vision moving forward. And obviously this organization took a gigantic step forward last year. They had a great season. And I think it's only going to continue in the right direction. Like Billy said, one of the follow-up questions was obviously losing a few big pieces. How do you plan on filling those voids? And the answers were tremendous. And, I took a leap of faith. And here we are a few weeks later. And I think that leap of faith has paid off, and obviously the surrounding cast, the players that this organization has brought in are nothing short of incredible, and I cannot wait to be part of something amazing and hopefully be a small piece of making that vision that Billy and Steve and Alex have for this organization, which is to be a championship caliber ball club and hopefully win it all. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much. We're now going to open up the portion for questions and answers. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hey, Justin, over to your right. Hi, Steve Gelbs, SNY. Congratulations. Welcome to New York. Both you and Billy used the term leap of faith, and I'm just curious what it was about the conversations that gave you the confidence that not only did they have this vision that lined up with your vision, but that they'd be able to execute on it the way that they have.
Steve. I think that was the short answer. Obviously Billy has a vision, knows the team intimately and what puzzle pieces best fit to make the complete puzzle. But ultimately, some of those pieces aren't cheap, and I think in the background, Steve is like, hey, we're going to do what's necessary to make this organization a championship caliber ball club. So I had faith in that.
And Billy, for you, the resume for Justin speaks for itself, but in the conversations as you got to know him, was there anything in particular that stood out to you that enhanced your desire to bring him here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the attention to detail. Like, athletes at a very high level, tend to separate themselves a little bit with their focus, their kind of preparation, and I think in maybe our second Zoom call, we were talking a little bit in more detail, and I was getting a sense of Justin and how he approaches the competition, how he approaches his work days, how he approaches the starts, and you saw this heightened level focus that you sometimes see from elite athletes. So it gave us a lot of confidence that he was the right guy.
Anthony DiComo, MLB.com. Justin, Billy mentioned at the winter meetings that he had asked you many times what you've been able to do to pitch at such a high level at age 39. I'm just curious, what was your answer, and how do you expect that to continue as you go forward here?
I think the answer to that is just being adaptable. I think being willing to take in new information and add that to my repertoire of things I can do to stay healthy. I think the beginning of my career, I would say I was probably, and my wife would probably agree, I was probably quite stubborn. I think once things change in your career, for instance, my core surgery that I had in 2014, I think that really, kind of shakes you up a little bit and says, hey, the way you were doing things isn't necessarily the best way, and let me be open to changing my routines and do whatever I can. I've always said, whenever my career is done, there will be no stone unturned that hasn't allowed me to be as successful as I can be for as long as I possibly can be. And I'm constantly seeking out new information and trying to actively better myself and extend my career.
Justin, Bruce Beck, NBC4 New York, welcome.
Thank you.
How do you view the opportunity to pitch in New York?
I'm really excited about it. I've always enjoyed coming to the city to pitch. I actually lived in New York for an off season. I love the vibe here. I love the city. I love the people. And to have the opportunity to come pitch in the city is something that I think I've always wanted the chance to do, and to be here now, it's just kind of a full circle moment.
Mark Roseman from Sports Talk New York. Just piggybacking on that, obviously you've pitched on the big stage, 35 postseason games, but Detroit and Houston, it's not exactly New York. Additionally, big free agent contract, and fairly or unfairly, from the Met fan base, you're looked at as the replacement for Jake. How has your career set you up to handle the pressure that is New York?
Well, I think, I've been in a lot of pressure situations in my career, and I think the answer I always give, which is similar to this, is that nobody can put more pressure on me than I do myself. I don't put in this much time and effort into my career and my body and take away time from my family for nothing. I expect to go out and be the best version of myself every day I take the mound. I know that big contracts and big cities come with more pressure, but that's something that you just have to relish and be okay with and not shy away from.
Bill Atson, MLB.com. Congratulations, Justin. Could you talk about how good it is to be reunited with Max Scherzer? And you almost won it all with him in 2012. And did he convince you, did he say anything to you to come to New York?
Well, we are working out together down in Jupiter, so I do see him quite a bit. So I got the chance to talk with him about the organization, and he said wonderful things. I didn't tag him in it. Like Billy said, it happened very quickly towards the end. It wasn't, I didn't have a chance to specifically have Max ask me to come here, I guess. But I am extremely excited about the opportunity. I think you know, we look back at, and I can't speak for Max, but I look back at that time, and it was two young men trying to establish their foothold in a game, you know, two great pitchers, and, you know, I wish we would have been able to win it all back then. But, you know, you look forward now, almost a decade later, and I think both of us are in a great place professionally and know ourselves better and are mature men with families, and you know, to be able to have that perspective, I think, can only help this situation and move forward in this new organization together. And you know, I think both of us, I know myself, would love nothing more than to see each other be amazingly successful and pull off a World Series championship with the Mets.
Thank you very much, everybody. We're now going to break out into the group sessions of the press conference. We're going to invite the television stations to the stage where Billy Epler will be, and the writers off to my right, where Justin will be after he finishes up with another SNY interview.
All right, so Gary Apple back alongside Andy Martino in our SNY studios. Justin Verlander is going to join Steve Gelbs. We'll go back out there in just a couple of minutes. Jerry Blevin's going to join us as well in just a few. One of the things that really struck me about what Justin Verlander said right there, the reason he came to New York, he said one word, Steve, as in Steve Cohen, the owner, the chairman of the board, the CEO of the New York Mets. And that certainly has reverberated, Andy, all around baseball.
He may have meant Steve Gelbs. He didn't clarify, and we're about to see the two of them together. But yes, this is what we were talking about off the top, Gary. Cohen's money, of course, is a factor, but also his salesmanship, his vision. This has impressed players, and Cohen likes players. He forged that relationship with Francisco Lindor right off the bat.
Very quickly.
He's had players over his house for dinner. So this is a culture that the Mets are developing where players are becoming interested in becoming a part of. It's the vision of Cohen and the accessibility to Cohen, which isn't necessarily common for every owner, but it's also the fact that he's willing to sell that vision to him. It really is remarkable what's happening with the New York Mets right now. The transformation, the fact that Hall of Fame caliber players are seeking to be here, excited to be here. This is not the tone of the organization that we've covered for a long time. It's worth stopping for a second and say there's a dramatic transformation taking place, and we just saw a pretty big piece of it.
I think we did, and one of the things he was asked about was playing in New York, and he said he's lived in New York in the past, right? He's married to a very famous model, and she has spent a lot of time here, unquestionably, over the course of her career, and so they've spent time here. He's been on the big stage, as he talked about. He's won a couple of World Series. He's pitched in over 30 postseason games, and so he understands the big stage. That's nothing that's really going to faze Justin Verlander.
That's right, and part of the appeal for the Mets, honestly, was the idea that Kate Upton with Verlander, bringing some glitz and glamour and people who know the big market, know the big scene, red carpet type people. That's part of the pitching is the main appeal, but this is a nice benefit that the Mets see.
All right, let's go back out Citi Field right now. Steve Gelbs is standing by with Justin Verlander. Good to see you, Steve. Take it away.
These are two horses to really lead us where we want to go, and just excited to have him here.
Welcome to New York. You know, you spoke about a number of conversations that you had that convinced you that you wanted to come here. Was there one in particular where it kind of clicked for you and you said, okay, this is the spot that I want to be for this portion of my career?
You know, I wish I could say that there was one conversation, but it really wasn't. It was, you know, I had to look at the big picture, and, you know, I think when I took a step back and really sat down with my family and talked about the decision, I think one of the things that stuck out most to me was the conversation with Steve Cohen, not you, and just how it was a very personal conversation. I think he was very curious as to just get to know me as a person, what drives me as an athlete, and that meant a lot to me, and I think it gave me a little insight into what he envisions or how he sees this organization, which is it's not just you know, an investment of his. This means a lot to him, and he wants to intimately know the people and players that are part of this thing. So you know, what more could you want from an owner as a player than that? And ultimately that was, you know, one of the driving factors.
So I'll ask you the same question then. What is it that drives you, not just as an athlete over the course of your career, but someone who's accomplished all you've accomplished to still clearly have that drive to keep doing more right now? Yeah,
you know, I think to get to this point, you make a lot of sacrifices, you know, family time, body sacrifices. You know, this schedule's not easy. There's a lot that goes into it. And, you know, I think why why would I put all of that work in to get myself to this point in my career and then not finish it? You know, like you look back at all of the people that have come along that have helped me get to where I'm at now, and it would be a disservice to everybody that's given me their time and their effort, including myself, the time and effort that I put in, to not squeeze every last ounce out of my career. And I don't feel like I'm anywhere close to that point yet. And like I said up on the podium, when I'm all said and done, whenever that is, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, who knows what the number is, but there will be no stone unturned to allow me to have been as successful as I possibly can be for as long as I possibly can be.
Well, you're coming off a year that in many respects was the best of your career, coming off Tommy John surgery. How were you able to do that, to reach somehow another level, 1.75 ERA at this point in your career, and again, coming off of a long layoff like you did?
I think a positive mindset goes a long way. I think when I found out I needed Tommy John surgery, my whole mindset was, okay, how am I going to get better through this process? And, I think when you're just so looking for new information, it has a funny way of finding you. And I was able to learn more about my body than I ever had before. And I think that really carried me into the season and through the season. And I think, I'm very hopeful that when I look back at the career as a whole, this moment that can be perceived as so negative, oh my gosh, you need Tommy John surgery. I'm very hopeful that when I do look back, it's going to be one of the highlights of my career because of what I learned through that process will carry me through the finish line the way I want to be carried through the finish line.
Is it all physical that you learned about yourself in the process, or is there a mental side, not just getting through a rehab like that, but also with all the information, a pitcher like yourself kind of utilizing that to exploit hitters in a way that you never did before?
Well, it's a great question. And the information is great as a way to exploit hitters, but I think more importantly, the growth that I had as a father, as a human being, is something that the silver lining. So silver lining is not doing it justice. The time I got to spend with my family and just connect with my daughter, I think really just helped me grow tremendously. And I think I've somehow been able to interweave that with just the competitive drive and athletic, competitiveness that I've always naturally had, and I just feel very pleased and happy with where I'm at in life, and I think that shows up on the field as well.
When you talk about competitive drive, I mean, we got a chance firsthand to see your former teammate Max Scherzer last year, and I've never seen somebody compete quite that hard. To have two pitchers of your caliber, not just skill set wise, but mentality wise at the top of rotation, how can that benefit the entire team, but even benefit yourself to compete again with him?
Yeah, I mean, a healthy competition is always wonderful. I think it helps drive everybody. But more importantly, I think, leading by example, seeing a Hall of Fame caliber pitcher like Scherzer go about his business, I think can only help everybody, including myself. I haven't played with Max in years, so to see how his routine has changed and what's benefited him at this point versus back when we played together, I'm really excited to start talking to him about that. And then, I think just as a data point for other players, I mean, I'm sure I go about things differently than Scherzer. So there's not a set in stone way to be successful. I think you can take bits and pieces from everybody and find your routine that makes you great. And so hopefully me being involved, the guys that watched a lot of Scherzer, I think maybe can watch me and maybe take something different from that. And, hopefully I think the goal is to make everybody better and make a championship caliber organization.
Well, Justin, we appreciate the time. Congratulations again, and we'll see you in Port St. Lucie soon enough. All right, guys, Steve Cohen, the reason he came here, not Steve Gelbs. Back to you.
We figured that, Steve, but listen, the Gelbs man might have had his input as well, which is always intriguing. So we heard Justin Verlander right there, and he said he's grown not just as a pitcher and as a player, but as a person, right, during that time off Tommy John surgery late in his career. It's not often that a guy has that sort of major surgery, a pitcher that late in his career, and comes back the way Justin Verlander did season ago, right? 18-4, 28 starts, 175 was the ERA. He wins the Cy Young Award, Andy.
When that news broke that he was having the Tommy John a few years ago, the assumption among those of us that saw that news was, okay, he's Cy Young, perfect game, championship, he's done. And next stop, Cooperstown. That would have made sense in his late 30s. But obviously, hearing him talk, that was nowhere near his mind being done. He wanted to improve. He wanted to mature as a person. You hear him talking about falling into a mindset that helps younger athletes, elite athletes, and drives them. But but maybe doesn't work for them as they age, which is like a singular focus that borders on stubbornness, not so interested in hearing input maybe. I know from reporting on the Astros organization that when Verlander got to the Astros, he just absorbed like a sponge some of the cutting-edge technologies they had, the legal technologies they had, like the Edutronic camera, which takes photos of a pitcher at 5,000 frames per second. So Verlander's able to analyze his grip and his arm angle and things that he woke up to and said, oh, this is interesting. And then hearing him talk about the year away with Tommy John obviously became even more reflective and more receptive to that evolving data and perhaps more mature as a teammate, as a person, as someone to take more input. So sounds like he's pretty self-aware about his own evolution.
Certainly does seem to be the case. Let's welcome Jerry Blevins, our colleague here at SNY, former Mets pitcher and A's pitcher, Nationals pitcher, Braves pitcher, has been around a long time. You heard Justin Verlander. Jerry, by the way, good to see you. Happy holidays to you. You heard Justin Verlander with Steve a moment ago talking about understanding, himself, understanding the big stage, and how do you think he fits atop this Mets rotation alongside Max Scherzer?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Happy holidays to you guys as
Thanks.
well. I think it's a perfect fit, to be honest. Andy said something before the presser that spoke to me a little bit, and it was that Verlander wasn't plan B to DeGrom. And I think that's because of his mentality. Now, Jacob DeGrom is the best baseball player I've ever seen. I think he's unbelievable. I would have loved to have seen him finish in a Mets uniform. But Justin Verlander, his approach to the game, I think matches more the Stevie Cohen mentality that they want to bring into this current iteration of the Mets. It's that killer mentality that bring my teammates along with me. The focus that he has. I was super impressed with his press conference. I've had brief interactions with him. He is an uber competitive person from the Bob Gibson cut of attack. He doesn't want to have friends that are on the opposing team because he wants to take food off of their table, that kind of thing, which I love, which I think is why Steve Cohen was very strong in pursuing him. But he saw such a change in baseball. Like our career started about the same time. Then you bring in like weighted ball programs and high speed cameras. The ability to say, I'm on a trajectory to be in the Hall of Fame already. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's an easy way to approach it. It's something that I did myself. I was very hesitant to change my program. But what I heard from Justin Verlander and what he's doing at his age, post-surgery, all that, is because he's able to bring in everything and all his knowledge and move forward, always trying to get better, never afraid to try something new to make his career last as long as it can. And I was super impressed, and I think this is a wonderful fit.
I think that's a really good point, Jerry. One of the things he said being adaptable, taking in new information, adding to the repertoire. And I wonder, as a veteran pitcher, how difficult is it to decide, okay, I'm going to make these changes, and I think they can be for the better?
Yeah, it's super difficult because, like you said, he was already a Cy Young style pitcher. And then all of this information comes in, a new era of analytics on top of training programs. That's where I had the hardest time adapting, was the training programs, because I never wanted to be hurt. My number one ability in this game was availability. I wanted to be able to answer that phone call every time they called down, be ready to pitch almost every day. And if I changed my routine in the offseason drastically to where I'm using all these new ideas and techniques, I was worried that my body wasn't going to be able to handle it being different. What Verlander's done is he's been able to sift through that and find out what works for him each and every offseason, which is fantastic. It's frightening because it's all brand new, or a lot of it's brand new, and you're able to say goodbye to things that worked and may not for you. But his ability to take that all in, not be overly stubborn, be adaptable. Again, so impressed by his press conference.
Jerry, all those things you talk about too, to me, and I so agree with what you said about the fit for the Steve Cohen Mets being better than DeGrom, which doesn't make Verlander better than DeGrom. We're talking about fit here. And to me, as a viewer and as a person covering, it makes them so interesting to watch. Guys like Verlander and Scherzer, who are taking into account this evolution of the game and these new technologies while still incorporating the mentality that's a little bit more old school or traditional that they were raised in, and seeing how they progress that into their late 30s, early 40s, and they're guys who are so fascinating to watch compete too. I mean, there's sort of two different styles of starting pitching dominance that we're seeing in the game. And Jerry, correct me if I'm oversimplifying this, of course, but you've got the DeGrom or Carlos Rodon fastball, slider, power thing where you're almost pitching like a closer for 5-6 innings. And Verlander and Scherzer are 4 or 5 pitches, different looks, using different technologies, of course, as we said, to determine how to get specific hitters out. And that, to me, is really fascinating to watch. And then as they continue to adapt into older baseball age, I personally love watching how these guys attack hitters, probably more so than that power style that is developing on a parallel track.
Yeah, it truly is fascinating. You said better fit than DeGrom. I didn't say that.
I was extrapolating from your comment. Fair enough.
There you go. But I do think that his ability to adapt and to bring in new technology, DeGrom has so many pitches. He can do a little bit of everything. And I saw at the end of last season him make some adjustments and start pitching more off speed. But I think that came from a stubbornness of him learning the hard way that you have to mix things up. I think Verlander is a little bit more proactive versus reactive, bringing in that information, staying ahead of the hitters instead of doing the same things until they make an adjustment off that. It's just different styles. And I think Verlander at almost 40 years of age, his ability to go from a pure power pitcher, one of the only guys in his early part of his career throwing 100, to a guy that still has a power fastball, but he leaves it at the top of the zone. It's still not that 100, but he's able to use it effectively and pitch off of that. It's fascinating. It lets you know that as long as his body holds up with what he's capable of doing and his work ethic, I think you'll be there. His approach to the game will never be too stubborn to get better, and he's always going to do whatever it takes for him to be successful.
What about pitching in New York, Jerry? I mean, we talk about this a lot. Are guys built to pitch in New York City? And again, he's been on the big stage. He's won World Series. He's won Cy Young Awards. He's done just about everything there is to do in baseball. Over 3,000 strikeouts. He's on his way to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. But there is an X factor. There is that intangible about pitching in New York City. Do you believe Verlander has the right temperament to be successful here and to thrive really on the big stage, especially when things are not going their best?
Yeah, I think it's an adding factor, a contributing factor to what is a drive for him. If you can do it on this stage, it is different. It hits a little bit different at home. When you're in the streets, there's nothing like playing in New York. And then when you're successful, it's great. I think this was a piece of the puzzle that Verlander saw as a challenge. Yes, I've done it everywhere I've been, but I haven't done it on the biggest stage. I really do think that contributed to it. And again, if he brings a championship to Queens, can you imagine? There might be a quick semblance of a statue outside for him. But I think he wants to put his stamp on New York City to say, I've done this part too.
You know, and on that attention thing, there's been no greater bullseye on any team in the modern era than in the post-scandal Astros. So he's not going to get more attention than that. And this is going to be easier attention and more positive. So he's used to all kinds of scrutiny, and I think that'll serve him. And the spotlight's going to be big. Look, what we're seeing here with the Steve Cohen era Mets sort of exploding over the past 2 years, past 2 off seasons, Lindor to Scherzer to Verlander and to all the other ancillary moves, Senga, that the team is making, is going to make the Mets as high-profile a team as they've been in decades, if not ever. If they win, competing for attention, of course, with the '86 team in terms of the legend of these teams. And Verlander, with his wife, Kate Upton, with the spotlight that he's had on him at different points in his career and the fact that he really is a baseball celebrity, does seem uniquely fit to be a part of that. And that's something that appealed to the Mets as well, I know.
That does make sense, Andy. I do want to go back to you here, Jerry, on the top of the rotation now. Here are 2 guys in Verlander and Scherzer. They were together in Detroit. You knew them well there. I believe he pitched, Verlander did, against you in a couple of Game 5s when you were with the A's. But what about these 2 guys being reunited? I don't know about the relationship. I don't know how close they are. But what about the 2 of them being reunited at the top of the Mets rotation? And will there be competition between the 2 of them? How do you see that?
Yeah, the wound is still fresh from that 12 and 13.
I'm sorry to bring that up. I'm sorry I had to bring that up, Jer.
That's okay. We did. He Game 5'd us both times, knocked us out. There will be competition. First and foremost, there's nothing but respect between those 2 guys There is so much competitive juices flowing in there. That's what pushes them to be successful. They're going to want the best out of their teammates, including each other. And it will push them to go a little bit further. There is an open competition. The funny part is it was Scherzer that came over to Detroit, and when Verlander was already established. Well, Scherzer was already here in Queens, and so Verlander's coming in. I think there'll be a little bit of juggling on like who gets that opening day start, but ultimately it's going to be that like almost cliche version of challenging each other, trying to one up each other, but also rooting for each other. That's going to push the top end of this rotation, hopefully into a very successful 2023.
Yeah, in getting to know Max Scherzer over the past 12 months, it's not going to surprise anybody to say that the guy wants to win. He didn't come to the Mets to like meet and hang out with a best friend. He wants somebody atop the rotation with him who's going to push him in the way that Jerry said, who's going to help him win a championship with the Mets. These guys are legitimately interested in this. They're not, of course, they're cashing out at the end of their careers with huge deals financially that they've earned through Hall of Fame caliber careers to this point, but they're not at all, these guys, just in this for that or for the money or to cruise on the back end of their career. They want to win a World Series here. I know Scherzer does. I don't doubt that Verlander does. So how they push each other is going to be more important than how they get along or if they want to have a drink together after the game or have their kids play together. This is competitive sports, and the fact that they'll push each other internally, obviously, as Jerry said, could be a huge positive.
I think it's going to be really interesting. One of the things we found so fascinating last season, every time DeGrom came out of a game or Scherzer came out of a game, there was a scrum amongst the pitchers inside that Mets dugout where they were trying to gain information, right? We saw same thing with Bassett, Taijuan Walker, Carlos Carrasco. They were all sort of hungry for knowledge from these two guys who were going to be in the Hall of Fame. I would wonder, Jerry, will we see the same thing again with Justin Verlander? And will he be an open book the same way DeGrom and Scherzer were to share his knowledge with the Kodai Sengas and the Quintanas and also Carrasco as we head into 2023?
Yeah, I think if you crack the nut that is Jacob deGrom and let him open himself up, he's very kind of singular in his work ethic and always has been, and not in a negative way. But if you can get him to open up for the betterment of the organization and that particular team, I'm sure they can do it to Verlander as well. Although on his start dates, he might approach things a little bit different. There's some pitchers out there that don't want to be talked to, will ignore you from this far away, from face to face. You talk to them on their start day, they will straight up big league you because they have that mental edge. But if Verlander's open to that communication in between innings, right after he's done pitching, I think it's nothing but beneficial to the team one way or the other.
I had heard through reporting, I covered much of the Astros run this postseason, that Verlander, one of those things we were talking about earlier that changed him during that year away from the game is that he became a more open teammate in the ways that we're talking about here as he came back, that he was more verbal in the dugout, more interested in those kinds of conversations. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves with Scherzer. Jerry makes a great point. If Scherzer could open up DeGrom on those kinds of things, and I think pitching coach Jeremy Hefner gets some credit in this too for creating an environment in which guys want to talk, then Verlander coming into that at this stage of his career when he's said to be more open than ever before could be a great thing.
And it can be invaluable. I mentioned some of the veterans who were in those scrums, but also a guy like David Peterson and Tyler McGill who can really benefit from the knowledge of these future Hall of Famers. So Mets have been very active, as Billy Epler said at the start of the media session out at Citi Field. You know, they've been doing these media sessions over the last week or so. The reintroduction of Brandon Nimmo, Kodai Senga was introduced yesterday, Verlander today. So it has been, Andy, I'll turn to you on this. It's been a very busy offseason for the New York Mets. Are they finished? What's next? What are you hearing? What's your take on it?
So the up-to-the-minute check-in on this through sources, Gary, that I've got is that the Mets feel, as of this moment, that they're pretty close to done making the big moves of their offseason. But I want to qualify that by saying they didn't think they were going to make a call on Carlos Correa until they did. So we always have to make sure to allow for a little bit of impulse there with the Mets in a good way. But a lot of their heavy lifting is done. I would say anyone would be happy with the heavy lifting they've done to this point. They are probably as good as, if not a little better than, the team that won 101 games. They're still looking for some bullpen help. You know, on that end, I'm hearing that the Chicago White Sox are shopping around Liam Hendricks, and I think that could be an interesting thing to sort of keep half an eye on. So they're still looking for some bullpen help there. Still looking for maybe some bench still looking to trade James McCann, debating internally whether they want to trade Carlos Carrasco, looking at for that additional bat, maybe a Michael Conforto reunion, maybe a Brandon Drury reunion. So there are transactions that will happen, but probably not another glitzy news conference like this in the short term.
I think that nobody could be disappointed in this Mets offseason. It's been, you know, from a strictly friendly coverage point, it's been incredible. They've added to what we thought was going to be kind of a make or break year. Are they going to let everybody walk and build for the future? What they've done is astounding. They've done both. They haven't sacrificed any draft picks when they sign guys, and they've made their team better. It's pretty amazing. Everybody, they still have the shortcoming of left-handed power in their lineup, or just power in general outside of Alonso and Lindor. A little bit of bullpen help, which is always, every team right now feels they need depth in their bullpen. But I think everybody that covers the Mets has to be appreciative. Even those that don't have to look of what they've done in Queens, and Steve Cohen and Billy Epler have done, with a little bit of envy and gratitude for this era of the New York Mets.
I would think so, Jerry. It is certainly a different era with the New York Mets. And I think we wrap this up, you know, going back to Verlander when he was asked why he eventually came to the New York Mets. He said one word, Steve, as in Steve Cohen. They hit it off. Very strong relationship there. And that's something Steve has done here. It is a few years as the owner and the CEO and the chairman of the board of the New York Mets. He has really shown that he is a player's owner. We saw it with, as Andy mentioned a few minutes ago, Francisco Lindor, and certainly the case here with Justin Verlander. So that's going to wrap up our coverage here. Justin Verlander introduced out at Citi Field just a short time ago. Much more coming on this tonight. Baseball night in New York at 6 o'clock, and then Honda Sports Night coming up tonight at 11 o'clock. And so for Jerry Blevins and for Andy Martino, I'm Gary Apple. We thank you for joining us. We say so long for now from our SNY studios here in New York. Take care.